In May 2006, Juventus were crowned champions of Italy for the 29th time, securing their second title in 2 years. Their dominance was total. 4 months later, they were kicking off the following season, not in Serie A, but in the second tier. The global superstars, Ibrahimovic, Vieira, Cannavaro, had fled, but the icons, Buffon, Del Piero and Nedved, stood defiant. This is a story of Calciopoli, a scandal that stripped Juventus of 2 titles, plunged them into humiliation, and forced the entire institution to the brink of collapse. This is a story of scandal to glory. To understand how far the club fell, you must first understand its immense height. Juventus isn't merely a team, it's a century-old institution, synonymous with power in Italy. This was cemented in 1923 when the club was acquired by the Agnelli family, the industrial titans behind Fiat. This was the birth of a dynasty. The club became known as the Old Lady, drawing supporters across the peninsula. By the early 2000s, Juventus had perfected a winning machine. Their ruthless, results-driven philosophy ensured perpetual victory, but also fueled a growing sense of resentment and suspicion across the country. They were the club everyone loved to hate, always seeming to benefit from refereeing decisions, always winning, and this dominance peaked under coach Fabio Capello, who delivered back-to-back league titles in 2005 and 2006. Juventus was the undisputed pinnacle of Italian football, a symbol of absolute, overwhelming power. This very success created the volatile atmosphere that made the coming collapse so explosive and so satisfying to their rivals. The stage was perfectly set for the most seismic sporting scandal Italy had ever seen. The scandal that erupted in May 2006 was not a slow leak. It was the eruption of a volcano. The spark was a seemingly separate investigation into claims of doping at Juventus, which unexpectedly uncovered something far more insidious. A web of alleged corruption, stretching from the corridors of Italian football to the refereeing appointments themselves. The evidence, which read like a script from a gangster film, was derived from transcripts of phone taps. These wiretaps reveal conversations between key figures at major Italian clubs, most prominently Juventus general manager Luciano Moggi and refereeing officials. The allegations were simple but devastating. Pressure was allegedly being applied to referees to favour certain clubs in crucial matches. Moggi, a figure who'd become one of the most powerful and feared men in Italian football, was at the centre. Though he consistently denied any wrongdoing, the details that emerged were shocking. Italian newspapers were filled with reports of wiretaps detailing Moggi's alleged attempts to persuade the vice-chairman of UEFA's refereeing commission. Perhaps the most startling allegation involved an incident after a 2-1 loss to Regina in November 2004, where Moggi were alleged to have detained referee Gianluca Paparesta and his assistant in a changing room, berating them for not favouring Juventus during the match. The pair denied this was the case, but the impression of intimidation and manipulation was cemented in the public mind. The scandal quickly implicated other giants of Italian football, AC Milan, Fiorentina and Lazio among others. This wasn't a localised infection, it was systemic. The shock across the country was profound. Italy became instantly polarised. For the legions of non-Juventus fans, this was confirmation of a decades-old suspicion about the club's institutional advantage. For fans of Juventus, it was a political hit job, a conspiracy orchestrated by their rivals. The timing added another layer of bizarre drama. 2006 was the year of the World Cup in Germany. While the scandal raged at home, Italy's national team, filled with key players from the implicated clubs, made light of the troubles and went all the way, lifting the World Cup. It was a summer of national sporting triumph, shadowed by domestic disgrace. The judicial hammer fell hard on the major clubs, but Juventus was the primary target. The Italian Football Federation's final sanctions delivered a gut punch and a near-fatal blow to Juventus. Juventus's original punishment of relegation to Serie B and a 30-point deduction was softened slightly, but the reality remained devastating. They were relegated to Serie B for the first time in their history, and started the season with a 9-point deduction. Crucially, they were stripped of 2 titles. The 2004-05 was simply revoked, and the 2005-06 title was controversially awarded to third-place Inter Milan. a championship Juventus fans would forever dub the cardboard Scudetto. Other clubs faced severe penalties as well. AC Milan received an 8-point deduction, Fiorentina 15 points and Lazio 3. The personal consequences were just as severe. Luciano Moggi was handed a lifetime ban from Italian football. The club's leadership was decimated. The immediate sporting consequence was an inevitable exodus of players. Faced with the prospect of second-tier football, many of the club's biggest stars were quickly picked off by Europe's elite. Ibrahimovic and Vieira were snapped up by Inter Milan, a bitter betrayal for Juventus fans. World Cup winning captain Cannavaro and midfielder Emerson headed to Real Madrid. The formidable French defender Lilian Thuram and attacking fullback Zambrotta joined Barcelona. Millions of pounds in talent walked out the door, leaving the squad hollowed out. The Juventus team that descended into Serie B was a ghost of the one that had dominated Serie A. But amid the devastation, the core group of legends made a decision that would define the club's spirit and its future. They chose to stay. Del Piero, Trezeguet, Nedved and Buffon, players who could have walked into any team in Europe, decided their loyalty outweighed their ambition. These players stood by the badge. Trezeguet in particular embodied this spirit, scoring crucial goals despite the team's struggles. Their sacrifice wouldn't just be remembered, it would become the foundation of something extraordinary. The decision of those players to remain with Juventus in Serie B became the club's most powerful emotional asset. It was a commitment to the shirt that transcended financial incentive. These weren't utility players, they were global superstars, World Cup winners and Ballon d'Or contenders. Their act was one of fierce loyalty and refusal to abandon the club in its darkest hour. The players who remained offered the club a vital lifeline, not just in quality but for the morale of the entire fanbase. The fans felt a powerful, almost religious bond with these players, viewing them as the embodiment of the club's defiant spirit. Under manager Didier Deschamps, the challenge was straightforward: secure immediate promotion. Starting on -9 points, the team could afford very few slip-ups in the grueling 42-match calendar. Yet driven by that sense of humiliation, the team found a relentless resolve. They lost just 4 matches all season. Del Piero led the charge, finishing as the league's top scorer with 21 goals. In Turin, the Stadio Olimpico remained a fortress. Every home game became a pilgrimage. The fans sang the same songs they'd always sung, but with a different intensity. The club had never felt more united. In a display of dominance that bordered on inevitability, Juventus climbed out of the deficit and secured the title, gaining promotion straight back to the top division in 2006-07. The scars of Calciopoli and the perceived injustice were deep, and the desire for vindication was absolute. Their return to Serie A was not the immediate coronation many fans had hoped for. The first few seasons back in the top flight were characterised by instability, false starts and painful realisations. Claudio Ranieri was appointed as manager and the club enjoyed a solid if unspectacular return, finishing third and qualifying for the Champions League. The following seasons were turbulent. Ranieri was sacked following a string of unsuccessful results. Ciro Ferreira and Alberto Zaccaroni were appointed, but neither could provide the consistency required. The team finished in 7th place for 2 consecutive seasons, while the club that had been punished for corruption was rebuilding. Those who benefited from the scandal were dominating Italian football. This period saw a revolving door of managers and a struggle for identity. The core of Buffon and Del Piero remained, but the supporting cast and strategic direction were lacking. However, 2 significant developments were quietly laying the groundwork for a future resurgence. First, in 2010, Jean-Claude Blanc was replaced as president by Andrea Agnelli, and his first action was to appoint Giuseppe Marotta as director of sport, a duo that would prove to be the most influential in the club's modern history. In September 2011, Juventus relocated to their new stadium. This was a revolutionary move for Italian football. Unlike the vast, municipally owned stadiums shared by many Italian clubs, Juventus Stadium was club-owned, a compact, intimidating arena, built specifically for Juventus and its fans. The economic impact was immediate and significant. Matchday revenues doubled, giving the ownership the muscle they needed to build a team capable of dominating domestically and competing in Europe. Juventus were modernising and taking control of its own destiny. The groundwork was complete. Now they just needed the man to lead the troops. The turning point was the appointment of an old favourite, Antonio Conte. The former player and midfielder embodied the club's intensity and desire. He was named manager for the 2011-12 season, fresh from winning promotion with Siena, instilling a relentless, non-negotiable winning culture. His first team meeting was legendary. He didn't show tactics or formations, he showed highlights of Inter Milan celebrating their title, and then paused the video and said, "This ends now." The revolution was fueled not only by Conte's intensity, but by shrewd signings that re-established a world-class spine. The most important of these was the free transfer of Andrea Pirlo. Pirlo was revitalised under Conte, the architect who orchestrated the team's attack. Alongside the dynamic energy of Arturo Vidal and the homegrown talent of Claudio Marchisio, Juventus had forged one of the most formidable midfields in Europe, each complementing the other perfectly. Pirlo's vision, Vidal's energy, Marchisio's versatility. The results were instantaneous and spectacular. In his very first season, Conte led Juventus to a stunning undefeated campaign in Serie A. They became the first team to go unbeaten for a full season in a 38-game Serie A format. This wasn't just a championship, it was a psychological victory. A definitive return to the top, erasing the shame of 7th place finishes, from the depths of Serie B to the pinnacle of Italian football. The two subsequent seasons confirmed that this was no fluke. In 2012-13, Juventus successfully defended their title, showing tactical evolution and depth. The following year was an exercise in utter dominance. Juventus won a third consecutive title by setting an all-time record of 102 points and 33 wins. The title was officially recognised as the club's 30th championship, finally allowing them to wear the third gold star on their shirt, a source of immense pride and vindication for the fans. Conte had done more than just win trophies. He'd surgically repaired the team's damaged soul. He rebuilt the famous defensive resilience and fused it with the dynamic, overwhelming midfield. His tactical system, often a 3-5-2, suffocated opponents and established an identity that would persist. But the success under Conte was purely domestic. In 2013-14, despite their domestic record, they were eliminated in the semi-finals of the Europa League, missing the chance to play the final in their own stadium. The final piece of the puzzle was European success, and it remained elusive. At the height of their domestic power, a sudden rift with the board over transfer strategy led to Conte's shock departure in the summer of 2014. The undisputed dominance he delivered was now to be tested by a new figurehead. His final press conference was emotional. Conte admitted he'd given everything to Juventus, but the club's vision for the future didn't align with his. He left behind a transformed team, but the club's European dreams remained unfulfilled. Conte's sudden exit could have derailed the club, but Agnelli made another inspired choice: Massimiliano Allegri. In his first season, Allegri guided Juventus to their 5th consecutive title, and secured the club's first ever domestic double after beating Lazio in the Coppa Italia. More importantly, they defied expectations, reaching the 2015 Champions League final in Berlin, defeating defending champions Real Madrid in the semi-finals. Allegri's transformation was revolutionary. Where Conte's team was emotional intensity, Allegri's was tactical chess. His first training session told the story. Instead of high-intensity running, players sat in circles, analysing footage. We don't just play, we think. The Berlin final was everything Juventus had dreamed of. Walking out at the Olympic Stadion, Buffon felt history's weight. But Barcelona's surge dashed their dreams. As the final whistle blew, Buffon sat on his haunches, tears streaming down his face. The man who deserved European glory yet again, left empty-handed. Allegri's Juventus achieved the impossible: 4 consecutive domestic doubles, becoming the first team in Italian history to do so. They reached consecutive Champions League finals in 2015 and 2016, proving their continental status. And by 2017, they'd secured 7 consecutive titles, transforming from an emotional comeback into the dominant force that other teams feared. Despite their dominance, the Champions League trophy, the one validation that had escaped them, remained the burning obsession, and in July 2018, Juventus signed Cristiano Ronaldo from Real Madrid for £99.2 million. This was more than football, it was a strategic move to propel Juventus into the global elite. With Ronaldo leading the line, domestic dominance continued. They secured their 8th consecutive title in 2019 and then their 9th the following year, under new manager Maurizio Sarri. However, the primary goal still eluded them. Juventus failed to reach the Champions League semi-finals during Ronaldo's 3 seasons. After Sarri's sacking following the Champions League elimination in 2020, former player Pirlo was appointed. Ending the 9-year Scudetto run in 2021, Ronaldo left for Manchester United, his 3 seasons yielding immense commercial growth but not the coveted European crown. Allegri returned for a second stint, tasked with maintaining success after the golden era's end. Allegri's second spell proved the hard-won stability was fragile. 21-22 was their first trophyless campaign for over 10 years, finishing 4th and losing the Coppa Italia final. The next year brought renewed chaos. In November 2022, the entire board of directors resigned, including President Agnelli and Vice President Pavel Nedved, amid financial investigations. As part of capital gains violations probes, Juventus were hit with their second major sporting penalty in 2 decades. Initially 15 points, but later reduced to 10 in May 2023. Once again punished, they finished 7th and were ejected from the UEFA competitions for another year. Amid modern struggles, Calciopoli's legal battle finally ended. For years, Juventus had pursued legal challenges against Inter Milan and the Italian Football Federation, demanding the 2006 Scudetto be stripped. In October of 2023, they agreed to drop the action, closing the contentious chapter, though their rivalry with Inter Milan remains one of Italy's most bitter. In 23-24, Juventus won the Coppa Italia, their 15th, beating Atalanta under Allegri. This was his sole triumph in his second stint, but his post-final behaviour led to dismissal 2 days later. The club rebuilt again, appointing Thiago Motta, Igor Tudor and then Luciano Spalletti in late 2025. Calciopoli was the crucible that forced vulnerability. The loyalty of Del Piero and Buffon created defiance. The genius of Agnelli, Marotta, Conte and Allegri built the machine. 9 consecutive titles, born from the desperate anger after relegation. Juventus' story proves that a phoenix can rise from the ashes, but it never forgets the fires. From Calciopoli's depths to a global powerhouse, from shame to glory, this is one of the greatest redemption stories in Italian football. And while the old lady's journey continues, her place in history is eternal. If you enjoyed this story about Juventus, check out my Serie A playlist where we feature teams like Palermo and Sampdoria, Parma and Chievo. And in the meantime, stay tuned for more football history. One incredible story at a time.